Morning, everyone.
Morning.
So it's probably not very frequent that any of you have seen me like this, wearing my glasses. Typically, I just use these at nighttime right before I go to bed and right after I wake up, when I don't have to interact with anybody. Now, up until I was 5 years old, nobody knew that I needed glasses. I just simply ran into things. And I followed after complete strangers, thinking they were my parents. Then finally, my parents said, "This kid is not quite right. So he needs something taken care of." So after a visit to the eye doctor, and the eye doctor said, "Find the big E on the wall." And I said, "What big E on the wall?" They decided I need glasses. And so I was given my first pair of glasses, which of course weren't like these. These are Ray-Bans. My first pair was much more ridiculous than these. But when I put them on, my whole world changed. Because now I was able to see people's faces. I wasn't running into things anymore. So for the next few years, from the time I was 5 to 11 years old, I wore glasses. But there was still something missing. And what is that? For those of you who wear glasses, what's still missing? You can see everything in this cone of vision that's in front of you, but if your vision's as bad as mine, you can't see what's out here. You can't see peripherally. So all you people who are over here and over here, you could be making faces at me right now. You could be waving your arms back and forth. You could even get up and leave and I probably wouldn't notice, because all I can see is what's right here. Then when I was 11 years old, I finally made the move to contact lenses. Strong ones, and those are the ones that I wear every day. And again, my whole life changed, because now I had a field of vision. Not just what was right in front of me, but now I could see peripherally. So brothers and sisters, today I want you to hold on to that image, because I think it's a good way to look at what I want to talk about today. Right now we're in the midst of a national Eucharistic revival. It's a multi-year process put on by the United States bishops that began last year and culminates next year in a National Eucharistic Congress in Indianapolis. Now, why are we doing this? Why would you have a Eucharistic revival? The short answer is to increase our devotion to the Blessed Sacrament, to Jesus in the Eucharist. What we're celebrating every time we come to church since your first communion is that you were receiving the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. But the long answer as to why we're having this revival is a little bit more complex. Because you see, they've done some polls asking Catholics what they believe, which sometimes can be a little concerning. And one of the questions was, what do you think about what it is that you receive when you come to church every Sunday? Do you believe that the bread becomes the body of Christ, that the wine that the priest consecrates becomes the blood of Christ? According to statistics, about 70% of Catholics say that they do not believe that is the case. So about 30% do believe that the Eucharist is bread and wine become the body and blood of Christ. Maybe most people would see that it's a symbol, kind of ritually meaningful. It brings us all together and we share in this communal meal. But they won't say that it's truly the body and blood of Christ that they receive. So if our parish, if Holy Family Parish represents the general Catholic population, that means that about 30% of us would say, I do believe that this is the body and blood of Christ, and the other 70% of us might say something close to it, or maybe a lot different. My message today is not to shame anybody. It's not to point fingers, it's not to judge, it's not to say that you're in the wrong to believe what you do. Because faith is a gift, and I cannot impose belief on anyone. I can only propose it to you. If you don't believe something, then you just don't believe it. And so this whole revival, I don't think, is going to automatically make us more appreciative of the Eucharist. It's not going to be a silver bullet, but I think the reasoning goes much deeper. And the reason why I'm bringing this up today is because rather than judging anybody here who has trouble believing that the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ, instead, I'd like to offer a reason maybe why you might believe that's the case. And it is this: we do not have a sacramental vision of reality. We do not have a biblical vision of reality in our modern world today, which brings me back to these. So these glasses, these are the lens through which I can see some of you. I can only see some of you, but I can't see all of you here. Every society and every culture in the world has certain assumptions about reality. They have certain lenses through which they view the world. You see something and you make a judgment based on your preconceived assumptions. And our American culture has formed us to think a certain way. So in our American culture, we take for granted a certain scientific worldview, where if you take the bread and wine, for instance, if it looks like bread, if it tastes like bread, if it has the chemical composition of bread, then it's bread. And no priest who says prayers over it is going to change that fact. That's how our culture would see what we do every time we come to church. What I'm going to argue today is that that worldview, that reality is only what we can see, touch, hear, taste, smell, is like having these glasses on. It's only a certain field of reality. The Christian mindset, however, the sacramental vision of the world, sees things a little differently. Instead of seeing this cone of vision, it expands a little bit and sees things a little more broadly. Very few people today, in today's world, I think would say that there's absolutely no spiritual reality to us. Most people, even if they're not religious, even if they don't come to church, I think most people would say that we are spiritual beings, right? In addition to my physical body, there's a spiritual, immaterial, invisible component to me. I'm not just trillions of atoms and a bunch of neurons firing rapidly. I have a soul. I have a psyche. I have an interior part of me that sets me apart from animals, that sets me apart from every other person in the world. We recognize there's human dignity to us. We recognize there's a thing called love and loyalty and sacrifice and things that you can't see with your eyes, but you know what they are. We can see beauty and not be able to explain it. Those are some of the things that we take for granted. And I'm going to challenge you that if you believe all those things, then this is my question. Why can't all of reality have an immaterial, invisible component to it? Why can't there be a spiritual reality out there too? If God can take this body of mine, give it dignity, if God can give a human body to his son, Jesus Christ, who came into this world, took on flesh, then why can't God take simple elements of bread and wine and turn them into his own body and blood, which can serve you and me as food for the journey? To take it a step further, let's look at some of the other things that we do, that we Catholics do on a regular basis. What did you do, the first thing you did when you came into church today? You dipped your hands into that holy water font and did this, or you did this, or something that you grew up learning. What would our culture say? They'd say, that's just water you're dipping your hands into and nothing more. But for us Christians, it is something more. It's a reminder of our baptism in which we were washed clean and claimed by Christ. Today we have a couple of baptisms after Mass. Where are our girls at? They're here somewhere. Okay. So we have a couple of girls who are going to be baptized today. When you are baptized, or when you see someone baptized, do you see just water poured over the head of a child and somehow they're incorporated into some organization like the church? Or do you see the life of God being poured into that child, where they're conformed to Christ and made a son or daughter of our Heavenly Father? Or let's take the sacrament of marriage. Our cultural vision would say that marriage is just a contract on a piece of paper that you can get at the snap of a finger and then you can get rid of at the snap of a finger. But a sacramental vision sees much more than that. This vision sees that a man and a woman are joined intentionally by God with a bond, and that goal between them is to get each other to heaven and their children to heaven. Or take the church's teachings on marriage and family life and the human body and morality. Those are pretty controversial things in today's world, aren't they? Those teachings make no sense to our modern American vision. Why? Because with the modern worldview, the human body is just something that can be used and manipulated, especially if it's my own body. I have the right to do what I want with it. And any rules and expectations that are put on me are an obstruction of my freedom to be my own creator. But a sacramental vision, on the other hand, sees that we have a great dignity because we've been created by God. And we're most free when we become fully who God has created us to be. You see, the whole sacramental vision of our Catholic faith depends on the fact that God can act here on earth with you and me, because he already has in the person of his son, Jesus Christ. Our culture, what does our culture say about Jesus? What do they think he is? Well, he's a historical figure who taught some good lessons, and that's about it. How many Catholics believe that? There's a lot. But our sacramental vision sees things a little differently. Because God can act here. He can send his son to take on a human body. He can heal the sick. He can feed the thousands. He can rise from the dead. That's the difference between our modern secular vision of reality that we get from our American culture and a sacramental vision of reality that you get from your faith. That's the difference between having glasses on and seeing this cone of reality that's right in front of you, and then putting on the contact lenses to see more than just what's right in front of you. Some of you might be saying to yourself, well, Father, with all due respect, been a Catholic my whole life, been coming to church, been kind of doing what I need to do, but I'm still having trouble seeing and believing everything about our faith, not just the Eucharist, but everything else. You might be saying, I'm a skeptic. And I'm here to say, me too. I've been a skeptic my whole life. I'm constantly questioning things that people tell me. If you were to tell me something, my first instinct is to say, really? I'm going to have to look into that a little bit. Not that I'm doubting you, but that's my natural reaction. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a meteorologist. Then I wanted to be an astronomer. Then I wanted to be a doctor. And I'm constantly asking those questions. Even if the church tells me I need to believe something and teach something, I need to figure that out for myself. And so I can see where everyone is coming from. But there comes a point when you have to acknowledge that the physical world that you see in front of you may not be all that there is. Maybe there's something beyond the physical. How do you answer questions like, why am I here? How do I tell right from wrong? What happens to me after I die? What's going on with this bread and wine on the altar? Science can't answer that. Reason can't answer that. That's where faith comes in. That's where you see how God can act. And so I want all of us here to ask ourselves this question: how do I see reality? What is reality to you? What does your vision look like? Because a sacramental vision allows you to live your life differently from everybody else. Now you can see reality not as everyone else sees it, but as God sees it. Now you can look at suffering in the world. That's one of those real big problems, isn't it? How does the world see suffering? Why would a good God send suffering to humanity? It's got to be avoided at all costs. Now you can see how God can take suffering and bring good out of a hopeless situation. Now you can look at someone who has maybe gone off the rails in life and see an opportunity for God and have hope that God can bring conversion to their heart. Now you can look at your marriage for those who have been married for many years and still are irritated by that person. Now you can look and say, you can still say after all these years, God has put them in my life for a reason, and I choose today to renew my commitment to them. Our sacramental vision allows you and me to fulfill the command of Jesus in the gospel today when he says, you are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world. You can shine light where there is darkness. You can have a smile on your face when everyone else is frowning. because you see reality not as everyone else sees it, but as God sees it. You've taken off the glasses. You put on the contact lenses, and now you can see all of reality in front of you.